Okay. Okay. So we're starting with the Hayom Yom, as we usually do, which is our way of kind of like warming up into the Parsha. And so today was Kislev, the 13th of Kislev. And the Hayom Yom was, I thought it was very meaningful. So in the Hayom Yom today, it says, my father said, Chassidus changes what exists and then uncovers the essence character. So studying Chassidus is going to help you connect to your essence, and it actually is going to change existence. How does it change existence? So we're going to see the essence character of the Jewish person is beyond estimation and assessment, for he is a part of God's essence. And whoever lays hold of a part of the essence, it's as though he lays hold of it all. So I see Lisa has logged in. So hi, Lisa, welcome.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi.
So
Hello.
we're just starting here with a little piece of Chassidus. And really, it's very interesting when you study Chassidus. It seems like it's very mystical, and it's very, in a way, I don't know what other words to say, but mystical, it seems like a good starting point. And then if I've been reading a book lately on quantum physics, and it turns out that a lot of the concepts of quantum physics are pretty much all the things that we learned in Chassidus or vice versa. So when it says that the essence character of a Jewish person is beyond estimation because he is a part of God's essence, and if you have a little bit of a part of that essence, it's as though you've got the whole thing. So this is really a concept in quantum physics, that the part contains the whole and the whole contains the part. And really, if you learn it in terms of Chassidus, it might be hard to understand. But if you start to become familiar with the quantum physics reality, then many teachings of Torah and particularly Chassidus become much more grabbable, or you're able to really get them, because this fact that we are a part of God, and if you can understand that, that means that we have, whatever God is, we have a part of that within us, then it's pretty awesome to who we are. Now, we were speaking last week when Yakov Avinu lay down. Hi, sorry, just want to say, I see that you've joined, so hi. When Yaakov Avinu lay down and he had that expression, I'm just saying hi. When he had that experience of the ladder going up and down, and then he woke up and he said, wow, this is such a holy place, and I didn't know myself. Va'anochi lo yadati. So we said, Rav Kook explained it, that I didn't know what I'm capable of. I'm capable of having this incredible spiritual experience. And so now we're saying that Chassidus uncovers the essence character of what a person and what is the reality of a person. And a person is beyond estimation and assessment. It says here, Jewish person. Now, I don't really know soul-wise exactly what the difference is of a soul of a Jew and a non-Jew. It's not clear to me exactly how those differentiations are made, but the soul of a Jew is a part of God's essence, and whoever can get any part of that essence, it's then you have the whole thing, because a part of the whole is like the whole of the part. So just as the essence is unlimited, so God is unlimited, so is the part unlimited. So a person's soul, we don't realize how big we are, not our personality, not our ego, but our soul capacity. The spiritual part of us is unlimited. How do we know that? Because God is unlimited, and the piece of us, the piece of God that is within us, is also unlimited. That's pretty awesome. So it says this is similar to tzitzis being on the corner, in other words, of the same material as the corner of the garment. The existence of the soul is an entity discrete from God's essence, is only because God created the soul to be a created being. And Chassidus reveals the essence, character of the soul. So I think what it's saying is that we say tzitzis fits onto the corner of the garment, but really the corner of the garment is the same thing as the whole garment. Tzitzis are fitting onto the whole garment, not just to the corner. So the same thing, that the soul has a separate existence from God's essence, only because God makes it separate. God makes a separate existence of the soul, but in actual fact, it's the same. Can we really believe it? That it's the same substance of our soul as what is God. So God is infinite, we infinite. You grab hold onto a person's essence, you're grabbing onto godliness. And just like the corner of the garment is really a part of the whole garment, so the soul is only discrete from God because Hashem made it so that we are a separate entity. If Hashem would have made it differently, he could have made it that we just one big soup of existence, one big all-inclusive soup, but he made it such that we are a separate existence, and so we are a separate existence from God. So that's the Hayom Yom for today. So if you're joining late, so just to summarize, we're saying that Chassidus teaches us and helps us to reveal the essence of what a person is, reveals the essence, character of a person. And the person's essence is beyond estimation because person's essence is a part of God. And just as God is infinite, the person's essence is infinite, and it's made of the same substance. And we brought in quantum physics to talk about this reality and how the reality of quantum physics, where the part is of the whole and a whole is of the part, is a kind of way of understanding this. So moving on, and welcome to Shulamit, which just joined us. So now we're coming into this week's Parsha, this week's Torah reading. And the stories of the Torah are going so fast that last week we left out a lot of parts because we spent our time dealing with Yaakov's dream and how he lay down and had this dream of the ladder with the angels going up and down. And we spoke about that ladder being, it could be external to Yaakov as something that he dreamt about, but some of the Torah commentators said it's a ladder within him, and these angels were going up and down within him. But really, once he had that dream and he moved on, he woke up. We didn't talk about it at all. I just want to talk about it very briefly now, that he then went on towards his future, towards meeting Rachel. And last week in the Parsha was a very beautiful moment that you had a bunch of shepherds waiting at a well, and they couldn't take the rock off the mouth of the well. And they were waiting for many shepherds to gather at the well, so that when many shepherds would gather, they would be able to all together take the rock off the well. And it's a very romantic moment that Yaakov comes and he says to the shepherds, why are you not still shepherding? It seems like it's only the middle of the day. And they say, no, we need to water our flock and we can't do it till all the shepherds have arrived. So we know that wells are always a symbol of wisdom. And we know that anybody has the power to open a well or remove a rock that's blocking a well, there's great spiritual significance to that. And then the Torah tells us that the minute Yaakov saw Rachel, suddenly he got really excited and imbued with inspiration, and single-handedly he was able to remove that rock from the well. So Yaakov being the persona that makes all this wisdom accessible to us, that's the metaphor, that's the analogy. But in any case, he then goes to live with Lavan. He meets Rachel and he goes home and he makes all, this deal with Lavan. I'll work for Rachel for 7 years. And there's a wedding, and he wakes up in the morning, and it's Leah that he married, not Rachel, that there was a switch. And the Meforshim and the Torah commentators talk a lot about the relationship between Rachel and Leah. And it turns out that in a way, Rachel represents reality, not that she was superficial, but she was beautiful on the outside, not to say she wasn't beautiful on the inside, but Rachel is connected to some kind of manifest reality, but in actual fact, Leah is in a way a deeper reality. So Leah is the mother of 6 of the 12 tribes. Rachel is the mother of Yosef and Benjamin. And while Yaakov is living with Lavan, we know that Lavan, whose name means white, actually is anything but pure and white. He's the ultimate trickster. And he tries every which way to cheat Yaakov, not only from ending up marrying Leah and not Rachel, but while Yaakov is there, Lavan tries to cheat him regarding his wages. And when Lavan finds out that Yaakov is planning eventually to take all of his wealth and return back to Eretz Israel, they create some kind of complicated plan. Who's going to have which sheep? And Yaakov says, I'll have the speckled sheep, you can have the not speckled sheep. And whichever which way they play it, Lavan tries to cheat Yaakov, but Yaakov is blessed because Hashem is with him. And whichever arrangement they make, Yaakov ends up getting the most sheep out of the deal. Until Yaakov feels, well, Yaakov is building up all of his family, and there are these 12 tribes, these 12 expressions of what is Yaakov's essence, who is Yaakov, what is Yaakov. And we know that Yaakov represents the totality, that Abraham was sort of an aspect of the totality. He represented Chesed, but that's not the whole picture. Yitzchak represented Gevura, and I'll just translate in English, boundaries, containment, kind of the yang as opposed to the yin. And that's not the whole picture. And Yaakov is the one that can integrate. So because Yaakov is this integrated person, I actually learned once that he needed 4 separate women to help him bring into being all the 12 tribes, because he's so multifaceted that just one woman wouldn't have kind of been enough. He needed the Leah, the Rachel, Leah being an internal kind of be sort of representing an internal reality, Rachel representing a different reality, Bila, Zilpah. So he has 12 tribes, 12 sons from these 2 sisters. Rachel and Leah were 2 sisters, and the other 2 women were their 2 handmaidens. Bila and Zilpah were both handmaidens, and they were half sisters to Rachel and Leah. So I think Lavan was their father, but they had different mothers. In any event, Yaakov is doing the spiritual work of learning how to navigate amongst the world, the worldliness of Lavan. And just like Yaakov had to navigate he got the birthright from his brother, then he goes to Lavan, and Lavan's trying to trick him, but Yaakov manages to kind of work it out that he can stay connected to his truth and leave as a person connected to God and connected to his truth. Now, this is very deep because just yesterday, I heard a fascinating lecture on YouTube given by a friend of mine who lives just around the corner. Her name's Annie Lippitz. And Annie Lippitz said that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said 30 years ago that the work of refining the sparks is over, and all we need to do now is do the work of bringing Mashiach. So first of all, what does it mean refining the sparks? What is that work? And what does it mean that it's over? So according to Kabbalah, according specifically to the Kabbalah taught by the Arizal, who was a Kabbalist in Sfat, I think in the 1600s, 1700s, I don't know if that date is right, maybe it's completely wrong. I know it's before the Baal Shem Tov, so I should look it up exactly when he lived. So according to the Arizal, the work, one of our tasks in the world is to refine the sparks. So the Arizal lived in 1572, he died. So he lived 1534, so in the 1500s. So according to the Arizal, one of our main duties, reasons for being alive really, is to take, if you imagine somebody holding a big basket of golden nuggets, beautiful golden eggs, and somehow all those beautiful golden eggs, the basket kind of breaks and all those eggs fall down into the world, and they're little shards of these golden eggs in all of creation. The Arizal says that the way the world was created, there were vessels of holiness and godly energy, and somehow these vessels shattered. And through this shattering of the vessels, it's a complicated concept in Hasidus, but through the shattering of the vessels, there were these shards of holiness spread out in the world, buried amongst creation, amidst all of the materiality of the world. Until 30 years ago, our job as Jews was to play kind of hide and seek with these golden shards. They called nitzutzot, these little golden, holy sparks they called, and to find them in the world and to uncover them and release them, and thereby elevate those sparks and bring the world to a higher level of spirituality, and let those sparks be redeemed from where they've been captured in the material world. Mm-hmm. That's a bit of a complicated thing, but I hope that's clear. If you have a question, you can post a question or show a hand or something. So while Yaakov was living with Lavan, he's the ultimate Jew. He's the father of the 12 tribes. He's navigating and he's negotiating, and he's got sheep and he's got money and he's doing all kinds of things, finding a way. Now, this work of redeeming the sparks is called Birurim. It's separating. In order to do the work of Birurim, you've got to be able to look at a bunch of physicality and extract what's good and leave what's bad, or extract the holiness from the midst of the unholiness. And that's hard work. So on the one hand, Yaakov is living with his uncle, who's a cheater, whose name is Lavan, which means white, but he's anything but he's doing this complicated work of Birurim, separating what he can make use of, what can be utilized for his spiritual work in the world, and what needs to be discarded and left behind. What of Lavan can he take with him, and what about Lavan and Lavan's ways does he have to leave behind? And he lived with Lavan, for a number of years. He worked for Rachel and Leah just 14 years. So he was there, maybe, I don't remember offhand how many years, forgive me. don't have that on my fingertips right now, but maybe 20 years he lived there, he was with Lavan. So he's doing all this work. It's symbolic of the Jew working in the secular world, so to speak, and doing this work. So this work has a name, and I just said the name in Hebrew. It's called Birurim, extracting the holiness from the lack of holiness. Now, this is specifically what we're not allowed to do on Shabbat. You're not allowed to sift and sort good from bad on Shabbat. You're not allowed to do that work of Birurim. Specifically on Shabbat, you can't do that sorting activity. Okay, fine. What did Annie mean when she said that the Rebbe said 30 years ago that the world, the avoda of Birurim is over, and now our work is different, and we don't have to do the work of Birurim anymore. We just have to do the work of Geula. So that's pretty amazing that Annie was quoting the Rebbe in some later Sichot and Maimorim that the Rebbe said and articulated, and it's been put together in collections such as Devar Malchus, which is works that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said later on, closer to the end of his leadership, that really all the refinement of the physical world has been done. And that kind of work we don't have to do anymore. We don't have to sort it out in that same way. Now we're doing a different work, which is opening our eyes and trying to see truth. Opening our eyes and trying to see truth. That's the work of Geula. So I'm not going to talk about that now more, because that's a slightly different conversation. But what Yaakov was doing in Lavan's house was exactly this work of Birurim, trying to be in this really unholy place with this really unholy person, and yet trying to find a way that he could navigate through it and emerge intact and whole. So not only does he emerge whole, but he has 4 wives and 12 sons and a lot of other things besides. So Yaakov goes down into this deep, lower place, and he extracts all this stuff with which he builds his family and builds really himself, so that he can come back to Esau and confront Esau. So when his most beloved wife, Rachel, has Yosef, then he knows he was sort of waiting for his heir apparent. And Yosef has many of the qualities that Yaakov needed and was looking for in the next generation. And so when Yosef is born, it's a very special moment for him. And he gets ready to go back to Lavan. And then Rachel is pregnant with Binyamin when they actually go on the road, and they're going to go back, and Yaakov is going to confront Esau. Just before we get to that, because that was all last week's parsha, I wanted to say something else. Oh, yes. We say that Leah wasn't as beloved to Yaakov as Rachel was, but Leah didn't really know that. I was listening to a shir, and I'll answer your question in a second, Linda. Leah, I always thought Leah felt unloved, but according to the shir that I listened to last week, the only consciousness that knew that Leah wasn't beloved was Hashem, according to one of the commentators on the Torah, that Yaakov didn't. There was a different kind of relationship between Rachel and Leah, but Leah was responsible for bringing 6 of the 12 tribes. So there was a very solid bonding in that relationship. Okay, Linda, you have a question.
I think I'm just confusing myself. Last week, weren't we saying that Aesop and Yitzhak were Rachel's sons, and
Rivka's.
Whose son?
Esau and Yaakov were Rivka's sons. Rivka.
Who's Rivka? Rivka's not Rachel?
No, Rivka's Rebecca.
Rivka was Isaac's wife.
Yeah, Rivka's English name is Rebecca. And Jacob and Esau, or Yaakov and Esau, are Rebecca's twin sons.
Oh.
And then when Yaakov leaves his birthplace, and he goes to his uncle's house, because remember his mother Rebecca said, Esau is going to kill you. You need to leave until Esau calms down. So he goes.
She said, wait. She said that to Jacob?
Yes. She said, I can't lose you, and I don't want. Your brother's going to kill you. So go to my brother. And he left Beersheba and he's going to Haran. Haran is like it's outside of Israel. That's why on his way out, he has the dream, and the Israeli angels kind of leave him, and the exile angels come to him to accompany him on his journey. And then he comes to the well, and then he sees Rachel at the well.
Right.
And then he goes back to Lavan's house, and he wants to marry Rachel, and he says to Lavan, I'll work for you for 7 years. And then they have a wedding, but in the middle of the wedding, the father changes to Leah, and he marries Leah. But he stays there navigating with Lavan all these trickeries, making sure that he's not the victim of all those trickeries until he's ready to leave. And part of his leaving is that he has to go back and confront Esau all over again. Well, not all over again, but in a new way. Now he's become a father. He has 4 wives. He has many children. He has flocks. He has oxen. He has donkeys, sheep, goats, servants, maidservants. He has all that. And he's ready to confront Esau. And that's where we're picking up the story.
Okay.
We kind of focused on one aspect of the story last week, and we left out a lot of juicy parts. So I wanted to catch you up and fill you in.
Okay.
So coming back into the story, so this is the parsha where there's the fight between Jacob and Esau, or Jacob and the angel of Esau, because so we'll talk about that in a minute. So Yakov sends angels ahead to Esau, his brother, and basically says, tell my master Esau that this is your servant Yaakov, and I've been living with Lavan, and I haven't come back until now, but I have oxen and donkeys and sheep and goats and servants and maidservants, and I'm coming back. And then the angels come back and tell Yaakov, and they say, you coming with your family and your oxen and your donkey and your sheep and your goats, but he's coming towards you with 400 men. He's basically preparing for war. So Yaakov was extremely afraid and distressed. And it says he divided his people that were with him, and he divided the sheep and the goats and the cattle and the camels, and all of his family divides into 2 camps. And then he says, if Yaakov attacks one camp, I'll still have the other camp intact, and vice versa. And then so he's coming back to Esau, and he prays to Hashem that Hashem should protect him, and he divides up his camp, and he basically does 3 things. He prays, he prepares for war, and he prepares gifts for his brother, and he sends him large amount of gifts. And then it comes to the point that they have what actually happens, just to tell the story, is that he's moving with his whole family, and he's on the way to having this reunion with his brother Esau. And he crosses his whole family across the Yabok River, and he leaves some of his possessions on the one side of the river. the Yabok River. So
Okay.
he leaves some of his possessions, and the Meforshim, the Torah commentators, say, what does he leave? Anyway, I'll tell you what he left in a minute. And so once he's delivered his whole family over the river, he goes back alone to get these possessions. And our sages tell us that there were small containers of olive oil, little bottles of olive oil. And that's what he goes to get. And there's a lot of conversation. Why? Anyway, while he's going to get these small containers, he's all alone. And when he's trying to come back, he has the famous encounter with the angel of Esau. And the Torah commentators have a lot to say about this. What is this? Is he really fighting with the angel? Is he having an internal struggle that's represented by the angel? Is it his own guilt that he caused, his brother pain and his father, to be very, he tricked his father, he tricked his brother. Is he wrestling with his own guilty conscience? What is this wrestling match all about? Or, as the way it's written in the Torah, the angel of Esau comes to him and he actually wrestles with the angel of Esau till dawn. And at the end of that, basically he extracts from the angel a blessing. And the blessing that he gets from the angel is, your name will no longer be Yaakov, you will become Israel. Yisrael. And Yisrael means you wrestled with man, you wrestled with God, and you were victorious. And in a way, it's like the angel of God, of Esau, acquiesces to the fact that he has this blessing. Well, there's different opinions if the angel acquiesces, but it's a very cute moment, because when the sun starts rising, the angel actually says, I really have to go now, because in the heavenly realms, there's a shift where different angels sing different songs in the higher realms. And my shift to sing psalms is coming soon. So I got to go. So Yaakov says, well, tell me your name. You can't just leave. What's your name? And he basically says, well, your name will no longer be Yaakov. Your name will be Yisrael. And we know from that night, it says Yaakov was injured. Yaakov emerges really, I guess, victorious, because that's what it means. Yisrael, you encountered and you wrestled and you struggled and you prevailed. But he does get injured. And the place where he gets injured is in the sciatica nerve, which is interesting because the sciatica nerve, we now have a commandment that we can't eat in the animal, the equivalent of the sciatica nerve. It's called the Gad HaNeshech. And in terms of if there's an overlaying of the human persona onto a calendar, just kind of, how do you imagine that? But if you could imagine that, then this sciatica nerve is corresponding to the day when the Jewish people have is like our, now this is going to be a mixed metaphor, so don't get lost now. It's the sciatica nerve, but I'm going to say it's the Achilles heel of the Jewish people. Which day is that? It's the 9th day of Av. It's the day that the first temple was destroyed and the second temple was destroyed. So if we would say that on the human body, if there was if every part of the body somehow connects to different months and different days, so the place where he was injured is equivalent to this day that we fast now. It's called Tisha B'Av. It's our most vulnerable day. We had a lot of misfortune on the day. So that's in a way the place where Esau injured Yaakov. And so he limped away from that. He got healed later on, but he limped away. He was injured in that particular spot. So that's kind of the storyline as far as I want to take it. And I want to back up and kind of read inside some of these stories. And the way I'm going to do it this time is I'm going to read a couple teachings from Reb Shlomo Carlebach, because I love the way he teaches. And he's going to just talk about a couple of these ideas that we've sort of touched upon superficially, and we're going to go into it a little bit in the style of the way Shlomo used to speak. Whoever took down his teachings, they took them down in a very distinctive way, the way he used to speak. So I'm going to read them to you, and they're good causes for conversation, so we can have a little bit of talk around it. So when Yaakov comes and he's going to approach his brother, it says, the first thing it says in the very beginning of the parsha, and it's the word that gives this parsha its name. The first word of this parsha is Vayishlach. Vayishlach. And what does it mean? It means, and he sent. And who did he send? He sent angels to Esau, to his brother. He sent them ahead to Esau. So, and Rashi says they were real angels that he sent ahead to kind of like, before he and Esau would have their encounter, he sent angels ahead to kind of prepare the way. So that's where we're going to start, that Reb Shlomo talks about this idea of sending angels. And he says here, we see here that Yaakov Avinu sent all his angels to Esau. Who were these angels? So Rashi tells us, Malachim Mamish. For real, angels for real. And then Reb Shlomo says, I want you to open your heart in the strongest way. He says, we have no idea how many angels we create with our actions. And then he says, let's say I tell you that I keep Shabbos. Would you be able to know if I kept Shabbos with all my heart? There's no way you can know that. Now imagine you could see the angels which were created by my Shabbos. Then you would be able to know if I was complete in the way I was keeping my mitzvahs or not. So he says here that the Rebbe, Reb Zusha, said that he was up in heaven. So what that means, does it mean that he was able to meditate and kind of elevate his soul to such a point that he could see what's going on in Shemayim? And he saw the angels that were created by our good deeds. And he says, never, one had no feet, one had no hands, one had no arms, one had no kishkas, one had no heart. Never, he saw all those little crippled angels hanging out in heaven, created by our good deeds, which we didn't do in a whole way. We didn't bring our whole self. So we created angels, but the angels were a little deficient. So he said, Yaakov Avinu sent his angels to Esau to show him what his mitzvahs looked like. And the angels that Yaakov sent were his mitzvahs, and wow, gewalt, were they complete. So when Reb Shlomo teaches, he's bringing his teachings from Chassidus, and he's just bringing this idea that on the literal level, we can understand that before Yaakov encountered Esau, he sent his angels ahead. But then he says, you know, every deed that we do, we're creating angels. Every mitzvah that we do, we create angels. But are angels robust and whole, or are they a little bit crippled or damaged? And then he says, when Yaakov sent his angels to Esau, he's basically showing him, I lived with Lavan for almost or over 20 years, but my mitzvahs were very whole. I was really one with what I was doing, and I was on a Torah path. I was with mitzvahs, and I'm actually going to show you, you know, my angels are going to come and represent my mitzvahs. You're going to see the kind of mitzvahs that I did. So that was the one little teaching that I wanted to share. And then there's a couple more. So Now, this idea that Yaakov went back to get these little jars. So let's talk about that a little bit. So first of all, is there anybody who just wants to make a comment about the angels or just anything? Because we're going to move on to a separate idea now about these little jars.
Did the angels actually talk with Esav and say where his angels, and or did they speak with Esav's angels, or and also why tell Esav about this, considering he was still holding a grudge, for 20 something years of you took my birthright and everything, and here's now you'd have my blessing and you're showing it in front of me.
Right. Well, it doesn't tell. It says that the angels came back to Yaakov saying, and then they given a quote, "We have been to your brother, to Esau, and he's heading towards you with 400 men." So I'm trying to get a knowledge about angels, what they do, how they do, when they speak, when they don't speak, when they eat, when they don't eat, because angels kind of don't eat, but then
Right.
is the food. It's kind of confusing. So the Chumash quotes that the angels came back and kind of gave him a report. So is it that, to tell you the truth, I don't really understand exactly what this means. The Pasha's gotten its name from the idea that Yaakov sent these angels ahead of them. The angels are connected to his good deeds, aspects of himself that he could kind of, send ahead of himself. And whatever those angels were, we don't know if they talked to Esav. There's no evidence that they talked to Esav, but they came back to Yaakov, and the Chumash quotes them that they talking to Esav. Could it be that it's sort of all happening in Yaakov's understanding and his consciousness, that he projects a part of himself forward, and this part of himself kind of gets an idea and sees beyond time, now, here and now, and can give him some kind of a report. So I would say that it's food for further study, or like a question for further study. Okay. So let's go on to the next part. This part about Yaakov was left alone. Now, remember, he was with all his family, he was with his wives, he was with his children, his maidservants, he was with everyone. And because he wanted to get these pachim katanim, these little pots, little jugs, he's all alone and existentially vulnerable and, available to being attacked by negative thoughts, anxieties, fears, we don't know what, but he's vulnerable. So Reb Shlomo, I'm going to read it in his words. Now I want to tell you something very, very deep. Nobody ever wanted to take away Abraham's possessions. No one ever claimed that Abraham stole anything, and no one ever claimed that Yitzchak stole. But throughout Yaakov's life, there were so many claims on him. First of all, Esav took away all his possessions. Well, it wasn't really Esav. What happened was that when Yaakov was kind of running away, Esav sent his son or his grandson to go and kill Yaakov. But Yaakov said to him, "Don't kill me. Take away all my possessions. I'll be like completely penniless. And that's like I'm a dead man." So it wasn't really Esav himself, it was Esav's messenger. But Yaakov, when he came to Lavan's house, he was completely penniless. When he met Rochel at the well and he impressed her with his great feat of lifting the rock off the hole of the well, he didn't have any money, he didn't have any wealth, he had nothing. Remember the story of Eliezer, who went to look for a shidduch for Yitzchak. He came with all the deeds, all the wealth of his master. And when he came to Rivka's father, he could say, my master's a very wealthy person, your daughter will marry him to a home of luxury and wealth. But Yaakov is nothing. So it says, Esav took all his possessions. Lavan tried to steal from him everything. What is this thing about the 3 pots? Why is he so attached to these 3 pots? And he brings a Torah from the holy Ishbitzer. It's a very holy Torah commentator. And he says that basically, when we acquire objects, they acquire energy from us. When we have animals, whether they're domestic animals or our working animals, they acquire energy from us. And if a person walks into your house and your animal kind of bites or attacks someone else, it's because subconsciously you have kind of aggressive tendencies and it's affecting your animal because your animal is sort of like reading your energy. So he says that our possessions they are not connected to our conscious reality, but they're connected to a higher consciousness within us. So so he says, why was everybody attacking Yaakov and his money? So the moment that money comes into Yaakov's hand, or remember I said to you that Yaakov was doing all these Birurim in the home of Lavan. Yaakov is reaching a level of serving Hashem on a higher level. He's integrating, he's working it out, he's doing all these Birurim, and his money also becomes holy. It's part of him, his possessions. It says that Tzaddik treats his possessions with care, and he's not careless with them. So that's why he went to get them, because if something is ours, we're careful about it. But there's a spiritual level about it also, that if you're a holy person, then your possessions get an attribute of that holiness also. For example, there's a very famous story, and it's actually brought it's brought down in the Pesikta Rabbasai, that there was a little Jew who sold his donkey to a non-Jew, and this Jewish person never worked his donkey on Shabbos, and he sold his donkey to a non-Jew, and the non-Jew took the donkey and he worked him on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and on Shabbos the donkey wouldn't work. He had absorbed from his Jewish owner concept of Shabbos, and it's a true story. I think it's the Pesikta Rabbasai, it's stories from our rabbis, I guess. Anyway, the donkey wouldn't work, and it's very interesting that the owner, this non-Jewish owner, had a real awakening. He's like, the donkey knows it's Shabbos. An animal knows it's Shabbos. How come I didn't know it was Shabbos? How come I'm not on such a level? And it says actually that the owner of the donkey converted and became a great Torah scholar, big Rebbe in Bnei Brak, and his name was Rebbe Yochanan ben Torta, that he was so touched that this animal had imbued the concept of Shabbos from his owner. So according to Esav and Esav's way of thinking, a person's holiness doesn't spread or connect to his belongings. But it says, when we say in Shema, it says, V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, b'chol levavecha, u'v'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol ma'odecha. That we should love Hashem with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our money, our mights, our worldliness. So it says, according to Rabbeinu Bechaya, b'chol levavecha, with all your heart. This is connected to Avraham Avinu. V'chol nafshecha, with all your soul. This is the path of Yitzchak Avinu. Yitzchak was ready to die for Hashem. But then there's the path of B'chol Ma'odecha, with all your belongings. This is Yaakov, who worked the land. He was a shepherd. He navigated around Lavan. He everything he earned was done with all of his being. So whatever I want very much from the deepest depths of my heart, that feeling within me, that koach, that effort, it's sort of connected to what I own, and in a way I'm drawn to what I own because I have a spiritual relationship with that thing. So it says Yaakov even endangered his life for those little parts, because the holiness expanded into that little pot, and when the pot becomes holy, he had to get it back. That's just an interesting idea. I've heard about those pots also, that the holy oil in those pots is connected to the oil of Hanukkah.
I thought, yeah.
And that is connected to the secrets of the Torah, that those pots symbolize a lot more than just the holiness of a possession, but in that oil was the oil of Hanukkah and the oil of Chassidus and the oil of the truths of Torah. So there were two more little ideas, when the idea that Yaakov comes, and he comes with his woman, his children, and Esav is coming with his generals and his army, and Reb Shlomo made the idea that for a Jew, how important family is, and the idea that his weapons in the world in fighting the battles of Yaakov in the world, it's not about generals and army soldiers, but it's his children, his wives, and that's his wealth and that's his accomplishment. And then the last teaching that I want to do, I've never seen this teaching before. I know Susan's trying to come in, and this will be a teaching for Susan. Hopefully she'll get it. And even though she's coming 5 minutes before the end, it'll be worth it, because you never know, you can always catch something. So I see she's trying to log on, but I don't see her yet. Okay. So I'm still, she's struggling to get in. Maybe she's in now. Susan, where are you? Still not here. Okay. Shalomit, maybe you should mute. You know what? I'll just mute you, because when you make the, I'm just gonna. I hope that muted. Yeah. Okay. Is Susan in?
Yeah. Hi.
Oh, yeah, we're waiting for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I figure the last.
Yeah, I thought that there's the chance that you can still catch something. So you could still catch something, and so I'm glad you're here. So this is a deep teaching, and I'm just trying to switch my screen here. Okay. Anyway, it's not switching. So when Yaakov is coming back to engage with Esav, it says he put the handmaids and their children first, then Leah and her children next, then Rachel, and then Yosef last. So this is a very practical list of how Yaakov organized his family in his approach to encountering Esav. But Chassidus is going to give a way deeper explanation on this organization of the handmaids and the children, Leah, then Rachel, and then Yosef. So I thought it's pretty interesting. And I also wanted to share with you, and I didn't share yet, that he also, Okay. So when Yaakov organized his family, it says that the maidservants, Bilhah and Zilpah, were first, then came Leah, then Rachel at the end. What's going on? So, so it says that Esav and Yaakov were both pupils of Yitzchak. And Esav said, the Torah doesn't reach everywhere. I know everything. I know every law of Shabbos, and I still don't keep Shabbos. I know every law of Sukkos, but I don't mind not sitting in the Sukkah. I don't really care. And Yaakov, are you telling me that the Torah really reaches you? Do you really have a deep relationship with Torah? So the Zohar teaches that everything that went on between Esav and Yaakov was going on in Shemayim at the same time. And in Shemayim, heaven, Esav is saying to Yaakov, if it's so important to serve Hashem, then why are women exempt from so many mitzvot? Okay, this is a deep Torah from, this is a deep Torah, and I hope that we're going to be able to understand it in a meaningful way. So Yaakov says, Esav, when I serve God, the way I serve God, I'm serving God with such a fullness of my heart that my wives are included in my mitzvot, and in a way they get the benefit of my mitzvot. Like if a man says Kiddush and he says it, he can include his wife in that Kiddush, and his wife, it's as if she said the Kiddush herself. So, and then it says, and and it's also because of the wife that the man himself can reach higher levels in his own performance, because in a way, they a partnership, the husband and wife. But Esav, the way you do mitzvot, it doesn't work like that. And your wives have to do the mitzvahs themselves if they want to get any benefits. Shulamit, I see you have a question, but let me just say the idea first, and then I'll be available to hear responses in a second. So we know that Esav had many wives and many children, and the difference with Yaakov is that he had these 4 wives and these 12 sons, and he was very family centered, and everything about Yaakov was building up the family. And Esav had a lot of women, a lot of children. He was about power. He was about his generals. He was about his soldiers. He was about, might and charisma, but not about family. So now Yaakov is there's a Kabbalistic explanation of the levels that Yaakov's mitzvahs reached and affected his wives in different ways. And in a way, there's like a hierarchy, not so much of the wives, but a hierarchy of kind of, and they're using this analogy of Yaakov and his wives to talk about the depth that our actions can reach when we do certain actions and we do mitzvot. And we've already said that when we do mitzvot, we create angels. And now we're going to talk about the way, now we're going to talk about, no, you can't call me now. You can't call me now. I have to tell my son I'm teaching, and he can't expect me to pick him up because that's not happening. Okay. Okay. So let's look at these 4 levels. So it says, first of all, there's the level of Bilhah and Zilpah. And Yaakov says to Esav, when I do a mitzvah and when I'm learning, I do it on a level, and it's like they also doing it. So Bilhah and Zilpah, it's like I did, and then they did. And I was able to include them in my consciousness such that they're part of my mitzvah. That's the level of Bilhah and Zilpah. Then comes Leah, and Leah's even deeper. What's the level of Leah? The level of Leah is that Yaakov didn't even plan on marrying Leah. Leah is kind of higher than his conscious intention. The Medrash says sometimes you have to go and find a wife, and sometimes your wife comes and finds you. This is the level of Leah. Leah went to Yaakov. He didn't look for her. She just came to him. And this is compared spiritually with sometimes we're not even looking for a mitzvah. We're not even intending to do a mitzvah, and a mitzvah just somehow happens or results from something that we did and we didn't even know about it. So Reb Shlomo says, sometimes I could be walking down the street and I see a person I know. So I say, wow, how are you doing, Vayishlach? How about coming to me next Shabbos? And I didn't even know that at that moment, Vayishlach was feeling so depressed and so sad that he was just about to go commit suicide, God forbid. And he thought he had no friends, and he thought he had no one cared about him. And when I invited him for Shabbos, so I really saved his life. I didn't even realize that I didn't even know what I was doing. It just happened that I was in the right place at the right time. And so he says, even the things I do that are beyond my own comprehension, beyond my knowing what I'm doing, can come from the deepest, they can come from a place within me that is way deeper than even my conscious awareness. And this is what we're saying is Leah. Leah is always this level that's even beyond kind of my conscious awareness. And then, so this is the level of Leah, that it's really changing things on a very deep level. And it says that this is the level of Reb Eli Melech. There was, I guess this is Reb Eli Melech of Lezhinsk, that people would come to see him, and sometimes just walking down the street, he was affecting people. He didn't even know how he was affecting people. And then it says there was the wedding of the daughter of the Helikas Zir of Lublin, and there were many, many people on the street, and the holy Lubliner was on his way to shul, and there was a little boy who was paralyzed, and they wanted the Rebbe to bless him, but there were so many people there, so many people, so they put this little boy right in front of the Rebbe on the street. I guess the Rebbe just said, could you please get up and get away? And he didn't even realize that he's kind of giving a boy a bracha, and the boy actually jumped up and ran away. So this is the level of Leah. It's beyond even my conscious awareness. And then the last thing it says is the level of Rochel. What's the level of Rochel? So I said earlier that when Yaakov, this is the last little thing, and then I'm not going to say any more, then we can have a conversation. When Yaakov, when Yosef got born from Rochel, Yaakov felt that he had the strength to go back and confront Esau. What is it about Yosef coming from Rochel? What kind of power do they both have? Rochel as the mother and Yosef as the son of Rochel. What was it that makes Yosef the exact opposite of Esau? What is Rachel all about? And Rachel's whole Rachel's whole energy is serving Hashem, but serving Hashem in a kind of very transcendent way. So Esau said that you don't have to serve God because it's not, it doesn't reach anywhere. But Yosef HaTzadik, he serves God. He doesn't stop serving God. He serves God in Egypt. He serves God collecting grain. He's serving God being the manager of the whole of Egypt. In other words, if you imagine in today's world, like somebody serving in, I don't know if I should say the White House, I don't know if I should say Hollywood, I don't know where the highest power is in the secular world, even the corrupt secular world. And there's a Jewish righteous person who's the most powerful person in the world, in the worldliness of the world, but serving God in every single moment. That there's nothing that they're doing, whether they, running the whole economy of Egypt, dividing all the grain into, during the 7 plentiful years, so it would be available in the 7 lean years. The main macher in Egypt, serving God with every fiber of his being at every instant. There's no separation between now I'm serving God and now I'm not serving God. Now I'm being religious and now I'm being, I'm working. Now I'm from and now I'm, in the secular world. It's complete merge, complete integration of just serving God with your whole self. That's the absolute antithesis of Esau. So, and that's what Yaakov comes with to Esau. He doesn't come just with his family, but he comes with all these levels of how do you serve God. The level of Bil and Zilpah is what I do. They kind of affected. It's a mitzvah that stands in the world and affects. Next level, it's even on even on an unconscious level, things have implications and affects the level of Leah. And then a deeper level, even the level of Rochel, where there's never a part of me that's not connected and I'm just totally tied up with God in every single thing I do. And that's what Yaakov comes to Esau with, saying, I lived with Lavan for 20 years or 25 years, I've forgotten the number, and this is who I am, this is what I've accomplished, I'm integrated, I'm whole, and that's the meeting of Yaakov with Esau. And let's see, I want to hear the question now that Shulamit had, and then so you can unmute yourself, Shulamit, for your question, because so let me hear your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, were you hearing me before?
Well, not, I didn't hear you. I just know that you wanted to ask a question because I see that you had a question.
Oh, okay. I thought you heard me before that and you put me on mute. No?
Well, I heard you, I heard sounds, but not talking.
Yeah. So it was interesting what was going on. You had just said about how you treat things, right? I was thinking about your angels and then objects and like how we can pick up information about people, I'm not going to say intuitive because our group is beyond that. We already know that, but I can't remember the name of that ability where you can pick up an object and you can pick up information about them, right? Because their field has infused it,
Right.
with data.
It's so cool
right
to see that this was acknowledged by the Torah sages, that they spoke about that, and now we know, intuitives and energy people feel it and can give testimony to it, that they feel people's energy field on their sofa or objects that they owned. That's very cool, right?
And so when I was making the sounds, what you were picking up from me, I actually was making little angels, I guess, I don't know. But what I was doing, which I do almost all the time, is when I go into a bathroom and I see it's messed up, because I was walking, right? So I was in Turtleback Zoo. It's like an area in New Jersey, and I was walking, listening to everything you were saying, and then I had to pee. So I went in there, and I didn't know it was still on. But what was interesting is you were hearing me clean the bathrooms. Like I was going into all the stalls and picking up the paper and flushing the toilets. And the reason for that, the reason I do that is because I know the mentality that people have, they will, if something is treated with disrespect, they will do the same. So I create an environment wherever I go when I can, which shows that something is being cared about and respected. And so it was interesting that you had been saying that. So I was creating, I guess, little angels. The other thing that I was thinking about angels, two things. I was thinking, one, angels as energetic frequencies of karma, right? Karma meaning action. And what do we do the most to create karma with is our mind. So our emotionalized thoughts definitely create reverberations, because that's what prayer is essentially. And then the other thing, I had studied something called the kahuna philosophy when I was around 20 years old, and how the kahunas in Hawaii were able to walk on the lava and manipulate the weather and so on. There was something they called aka, which was every time you touch something, you leave a strand. And it's interesting because through quantum physics, we now know that's called quantum entanglement. And so I was wondering if it's possible that how Yaakov was able to send part of himself out was almost on that aka cord of his connection to Esav. In other words, he was able to project his desires out onto a cable that was invisible, that was a connection between him and Esav, and then get information back, because the Hunas were saying that if as you do that more and more, you touch something, you create an attachment to it, right? Which is not physical. So we know now that that's not physical, that you can then use it almost as a telephone to get information back and forth. And so that's just a bunch of thoughts that I had while you were talking. And the other thing was about women. I had remembered someone saying that the woman was already considered more of a higher frequency that men had to study. And I was thinking about how the male gets caught up in intellectuality, whereas the woman is more connected. I mean, of course, we're talking generalities, right? Because there's male-dominated women and male-identified women, but how the woman is more connected to her essence because she's more connected to her heart. So it's just some thoughts.
Well, I appreciate all of those thoughts. I think the conversation about the men and women actually was with me. And we were talking about the fact that in the levels of creation, each day of creation, we're going up in ascending level of holiness. And so you have plants and, vegetables and plants, and then fishes and birds, and then animals. And then after animals comes man. And then after man came woman. And then after woman came a bunch of very mysterious things that are sort of part physical and part spiritual, like Moshe's staff, like the rainbow, the hole that Korach fell in, the manna, like certain things that the Bilam's donkey, the talking donkey, like I think there are 10 magical things that are physical and spiritual, and then came Shabbos. So women are the peak of the creation story, except for these 10 mystical objects. And so we were talking that a lot of the mitzvot are designed to, especially tefillin, to integrate the head and the heart of a man. Women don't put on tefillin because supposedly our head and our heart are much more integrated. And men need to pray 3 times a day to bring themselves to that more spiritual level of awareness, whereas supposedly women have a more intuitive connection. And although we're supposed to pray as well, of course, we're not obligated to pray in the same way. We don't have to pray in a minyan. According to some opinions, if you just say, Abba, Abba, Father, Father, save me, you're praying. But we can still, there's some opinions that say we need to daven, Shachrit and Mincha as well, you know, but it's not the same obligation like it is for a man.
Well, the thing that I was talking about is something that I had heard like a long time ago, which is questioning how come it's the man that needs to study. Like, why isn't why it seemed like discrimination, right? You have to realize I came from that whole feminist thing, you know, bra burning and stuff like that. So then you look at it from a more metaphysical perspective, and what I was told is that the woman is already at a higher level of frequency. I'm just saying what I you know, was told, and that it was the man that was not there yet. And so he needed to study to bring himself to that level.
Right.
So I was thinking more from a metaphorical, metaphysical perspective. I was going, okay, let's go beyond that, Shulamit. What might this really be about? Maybe it has something to do with the fact that men get caught up in their cerebral, you know, they become intellectual. They go to the head, you know, and they want to fix things, but they can't, but they're not feeling them. But the woman tends to be, so we're talking generalities, right? Generically, the feeler, and the man tends to be the thinker and the fixer. And that's where the conflict comes in, right? Just listen to her and feel her and don't try and fix it. You know, it's like, it's hard to be with her because I don't know what to do. I can't fix it.
All right.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments? Anybody else want to ask anything? Lisa, Sandra, Linda, anything else? No? Okay. Well, Shulamit, everything that you're saying, I think, is deep and pertinent and true. And like I say, and I think I mean it even more than ever, this class is really just touching on certain topics in the Parsha. It's not a comprehensive, you know, all the answers. It's just some of the issues that just in way of wrapping up, that Esav and Yaakov are definitely prototypes, and we as Jewish people are the Yaakov in the world, and Esav really representing pretty much the Western world, the Western approach to world. When Yaakov comes with his family and his children and his wives, Esav coming with his army and his soldiers, and that Yaakov is trying to bring this spiritual quality, trying to represent himself with his family. And we saw this other interpretation with his mitzvot in the world, trying to transform the world in this way. And we're still having the engagement now, Esav and Yaakov, Yaakov and Esav, us as Jewish people trying to bring a God consciousness into the world and fighting that materiality of Esav. And I just want to end blessing us. You know, we're coming to a different period in history, and it says that after Esav and Yaakov actually have this fight, they meet each other and they have they speak, and then Esav says to Yaakov, so let's go together, let's walk together, let's hang together. And Yaakov says to Esav, not really, not now. You on a different path to me. I have to go slowly, my children, my family, my kids, you're marching to a different tune, but I will meet you later. I will catch up with you. I'll meet you in Seir. And the commentators say that Yaakov and Esav will meet in Seir by the time of Mashiach, which is where we're coming to now. We are in the days of Mashiach, the revelation of Mashiach. And Yaakov and Esav have to have some kind of reconciliation. Whatever it was that each one of them represent, the closer we get to Mashiach, the more these two powers of being have to kind of meet. And what's that meeting going to look like? And Yaakov says, I'll see you by Seir. Seir is where Esav lives, really. And then what happened? Yaakov went to Egypt, he went to Mitzrayim, we had a whole long, detour, but we are looking to some kind of reconciliation. And it is interesting just to mention that there were many rabbis, Alon Anava for one, and others who felt that President Trump was Esav persona in our times, and that Esav was kind of doing tshuva through the persona of Donald Trump, that when Donald Trump gave Jerusalem back to the Jews as a capital, he helped us occupy the Golan Heights. He gave us opportunity to occupy Judea and Samaria. He cut pay for slay. That was Trump acting as the modern version of Esav, trying to redeem himself, trying to become an assistant to the Jewish people, trying to take the power of the Western world and start bringing it in service of the Jewish people and support of the Jewish people. So there were many rabbis who were saying that Trump is that personification now of a rectified Esav, trying to, bring things to a different place than it's been in the past. So we'll see what will happen with that. So anyway, thank you for your patience. We went over time. Sandra or Lisa, any other comments before we say goodnight? Otherwise, we'll just say, Lisa, you have anything to say that you'd like to say?
No, I'm just listening tonight. I'm pretty tired, but it was very interesting. I enjoyed it.
Good. All right.
Good stuff.
Good. All right.
To try to, understand.
I bless everyone with a good Shabbos, good rest of the week, and
thank you.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Same
night.
to you. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
And thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Bracha.
And thank you, Shulamit, for your very interesting comments.
Yes.
Thank you, Bracha. Hugs to everybody.
Bye-bye.
It's Shulamit.